Hey, what's going on, everyone? This is Mitch. Good Monday morning to you all. Hope you guys are doing great out there this morning and having a wonderful start to your day and a great beginning to your new week out there so far. We have many things to speak on in this morning's video, and the first thing we'll go over is the latest information that we have on this significant pattern change that we are expecting as we get into the new year. A few days into January. I really do think this has legs, and I think we're going to get a lot of cold air pushed into the lower 48, and I think it could be in the form of multiple rounds. The next question is trying to figure out, is there going to be any winter storm risk? And not just for the northern sections of the country or the areas that's already seen it so far this winter, but areas kind of far south. We need to figure this one out. And, we don't have exact answers one way or the other right at this second. And I just want to tell you that right off the dot. But as we get day by day closer to this time period, will a storm signal emerge? That's a big question here, so we're going to figure this one out as we go. So Client Prediction Center first. We'll go over the latest information from that. We'll nerd out with you guys, break down the evolution of this pattern shift as it occurs over the next several days. We'll talk about temperatures compared to average, and then we will go over what model guidance we do have from overnight into this morning on any kind of storms we're watching as we get into January. And then after that, we got you covered as far as what's going to happen weather-wise for your Monday, the day before Christmas Eve. Christmas Eve, if you will. Could be a festive day, especially as we're getting into this afternoon, this evening for certain areas of the country as far as snow falling, matched with the Christmas vibes, all those good things. And we'll talk about a little bit of an ice risk for areas kind of far south, maybe even the Carolinas. So we'll speak on it all. You can tell there's 1,000 tabs pulled up, so we got a lot to talk about. If you guys have not subscribed, certainly consider doing that. Like the video if you like it. If anybody has anything that I can pray about or pray over, please put it in the comments below, and I will get caught up with all the prayer requests, all the comments this afternoon from over the weekend, as I am pretty far behind. Let's get rocking and rolling this morning. So, hope you guys are doing well. Hopefully you got a short week, a couple days off with Christmas Eve and Christmas Day, but this is the latest from the Client Prediction Center, the 3 to 4 week outlook. Now, I've been showing this over the last couple days. This was actually issued Friday. They update this, I believe, once a week. So every 7 days, we'll get a new update for the 3 to 4 week outlook. Now, the 6 to 10 day and the 8 to 14 day outlook updates every day about mid to late afternoon, depending on what time, time zone that you live in the lower 48. But I want to continue to show this until we inch this closer. This is the 3 to 4 week outlook. This is from January 4th through January 17th, predicting the Client Prediction Center, the experts, not just Mitch West, the experts at the National Weather Service is predicting below average temperatures where you're in the blue. Now, the confidence is highest where you have this darker shade of blue. This is a 60% chance of temperatures being below normal, below average. And for January 4th to January 17th, that's the coldest time of the year for most of the lower 48, if not all. Okay, so you get 5 to 10 degrees below average in the early and middle portion of January. That's downright cold. It doesn't matter where you live. Okay, once you get this lighter shade of blue, 55% chance of that. And this even lighter shade of blue, 50% chance. And then they're going for above average temperatures for the southwest, which could change. Let's see. I'm going to talk about that as we progress throughout the video. But this, I cannot reiterate this enough. This is pretty uncommon from the Client Prediction Center, I think, for a 3 to 4 week outlook to have this much confidence one way or the other on below or either above average temperatures, especially below average. Now, I will tell you in the same time period, they are predicting below average precipitation. So, is it going to be cold or dry, or is it going to be wintry and cold? That's a big question. Now, let's go back to this. I do want to show you the latest 8 to 14 day outlook. We're starting to beat away, and this is from, I believe, December. Let me click on it just to make sure. I don't want to just guess here. This is from December 30th through the January 5th, okay? They're starting to beat back those widespread chances of above average temperatures. You're starting to get a little section down here for the south that's back to around average, even below average down here in southern sections of Florida, and back to around, 50-50 shot either way of around average temperature. Anytime I see this gray on these maps, I just think, hey, chance of around average temperatures for this time of the year. So that's interesting. And I do think by the time we get into stuttering there, today's afternoon's outlook, I think that we'll start to get more widespread blue showing up on the map up here and down here. That's my guess right now. So All right, this is the part where we'll nerd out with you guys. We'll spend some time on this. This is the part where it kind of maybe lulls people to sleep. You don't quite understand. And listen, even as me, I guess you would say the teacher explaining this is even difficult for me because I want to explain it in the best way where you guys as the audience, people who are watching, can understand. But it's important to break down this. This is the 500 millibar upper pattern, okay? Where you see the oranges, the reds, the yellows, that's high pressure, ridging. Where you see the blues, even the shades of green, that's lower pressure, troughing. A trough of low pressure, an upper level low, cutoff low. And normally when you see the blues, that's unsettled weather, below average temperatures. Normally when you see the warmer colors like this, that is above average temperatures. And depending on how close you are to the actual high pressure, normally it's calmer conditions. So we'll start this off for Christmas, this is tomorrow evening. All right. We'll continue to progress this, and I'm just going to go on and fast forward to the beginning of the time period we're watching. We got big time ridging over the eastern U.S. and central to eastern Canada. This is definitely going to bring well above average temperatures for areas of Canada for the foreseeable future. And then once we continue to move into next weekend, so we're like the 28th, 29th, you can look up here, Saturday 28 DEC acronym for December, and then you can look over here too. Not a whole lot changes. We could have in fact, I think we could bring severe weather. You see the blue right here, I think that's going to bring a storm system over the middle of the country. And then we start to get lower heights, lower pressure over especially the southeastern U.S. I think a trough begins to set up off the coast of the eastern U.S. This ridging begins to get pushed up into Greenland. We call that a negative NAO and eventually a negative AO. That means we have blocking up here. This helps to lock in a storm track. This helps to dislodge cold air. And then we get two to tango, if you will. I think this blob of blue you see here, this is a lower pressure, it's a storm system. I think this really kickstarts this pattern. This storm is probably going to move in around the 29th, 30th into the Pacific Northwest. This energy slides in off the side of this ridge. It's beginning to spike up here into Alaska. This ridging, this shade of yellowish orange. And as we start to move forward, this energy slides down here into the middle of the country. I think we'll have some sort of storm system the last day of the year, New Year's Eve into New Year's, and we're starting to get this lower pressure. So we'll stop it here. Not a lot of cold air is getting pushed into the lower 48 at this point, but the pattern is progressing. So we got the ridging trying to get pushed up here, creating that blocking, that negative NAO is what we call it. We got a ridge beginning to move and spike all the way up to Alaska. When it gets all the way up to Alaska, we have higher heights, higher pressure over Alaska. It's what we call a negative EPO. Helps to dislodge cold air from the North Pole, from the higher latitudes into the lower latitudes, which is us down here in the lower 48. Okay, so high latitude blocking is what you're seeing up here. Blocking, ridge of high pressure. So this is spiking, and we're starting to get this widespread ridge across the western U.S. also, which is ridging over the western U.S. and the western sections of Canada right in here. This ridging spiking all the way up to Alaska. So, all right, let's get this back off when we continue to progress this forward. As we continue to move forward here, we start to notice just a widespread positive PNA, which is ridging over the western U.S. It's getting into the morning of the 2nd of January. And then this ridging is getting all the way up to Alaska. Still that negative EPO and just widespread blocking. Okay, widespread blocking across the higher latitudes. Okay, now this negative NAO, this blocking over here, is trying to really position itself over Greenland. Not fully over Greenland, but I think it could continue to push towards Greenland. Okay, now we're starting to get, let's get this back off your screen. Okay, we're starting to get this dislodgement of cold air down into lower pressure. Lower pressure meaning maybe some sort of active storm track that's surging through this area. Now you're probably looking at these warmer colors over Canada right here and thinking, how's that colder air? Remember, this is the upper pattern. This isn't temperatures. This has nothing to really do with temperatures. Now what you're seeing on your screen obviously could reflect to the surface. It will reflect to the surface as temperatures, but this isn't meant to show you temperatures. So even though, I just drew this line here, this is cold air following this line and this arrow, because this ridging that's spiking all the way up to Alaska, unleashing cold air into an active storm track, potentially down here in the blue. Now, to me, this is probably going to bring some sort of storm system in the beginning of the year over the central portion of the country, the Ohio Valley, the Midwest, maybe eventually into the Mid-Atlantic and the Northeast. I still don't think the cold air is quite there yet. But we continue to progress this forward, and then we stop it right here. This is the morning of the 4th of January, 300 hours out. I know it's pretty far out. To me, this period right here, it has my attention. We'll draw on it again. Once again, ridging over the western U.S., spiking all the way up to Alaska, negative EPO, positive PNA. I know it's just fancy acronyms, but just focus on me saying ridging or troughing, lower pressure, higher pressure. All right, what you got is areas of Pacific energy, even though you barely can see it. It's there somewhat, riding this ridge down here. Okay, you have still some blocking up into Greenland. I would consider that a negative NAO. Okay, so this is up here, some blocking up here, and then we got, what this is doing is this is anchoring this trough over the eastern U.S. So ridge building up to Alaska, unleashing cold air into what could be an active storm track right here. You see all the blue, the lower heights, that's lower pressure, normally unsettled weather. Pieces of energy riding down this ridge, coming into this dip in the jet stream. Because remember, you see this blue line? That's a dip right there. That's a dip in the jet stream. Remember, meaning energy is kind of riding into this area, could be riding into that area. Cold air funneling down into this energy. I mean, it's January. This is locking in the storm track up here, also helping to kind of lock in that trough in place. And, I mean, this is a favorable look. I would say especially for, like, the middle of the country to the Mid-Atlantic. But listen, this is potentially a favorable look for the Southeast, too. This might be too cold, too dry for my friends up here. But listen, I mean, we're speaking on 300 hours out. I think that this is just the beginning of the pattern. I think if we progress forward here, we're going to have a trough that's eventually going to dig out west as we get several days into January. How is this going to dig? Model guidance disagrees, but I think this first blast of favorability for, I said favorable time period for winter weather and stuff, is just kind of the first wave. I think that interesting times come in after this too. But the Euro ensemble wants to dump this trough out west, spikes the ridge again right here. I don't think that lasts long, but you get a big time negative EPO, big time ridging up to Alaska, and this is just dumping cold air down in here. Whether it's an active storm track or not, who knows? Whether this ridge spikes here, who knows? A little bit of a ridge spike actually helps sometimes for winter weather. We'll go into that when we need to one day. And just to speed through this a little bit faster, this is the latest GFS ensemble, literally the one that's still running right now. Same thing, I think we're going to get lower heights as a storm system kind of moves into the Pacific Northwest and Northern Rockies at first. And then we're already starting to get troughing showing up in the Southeast. And they kind of connect here. And it's the same thing, folks, except the GFS ensemble wants to dump more cold air into the Southwest and the Western U.S. If you compare this time frame, let's go all the way to just the first morning of the new year, January 1st. You compare this time frame with what the Euro ensemble says for the morning of the 1st. It's definitely different. There's not really a trough being dumped out into the west. It's mainly for the central and eastern U.S. The GFS ensemble wants to do this, which is a pretty big difference. But regardless, it's the same thing. We're getting a lot of cold air dumped into the lower 48, except the GFS ensemble really favors the western U.S. with this. And it actually wants to spike a ridge in the eastern U.S. in the same time period that it's game on the Euro ensemble. And then eventually, it looks like at the end of the run, the GFS ensemble brings a favorable time period across the central and then eventually the eastern U.S. So what does this tell me? This tells me that the Euro ensemble favors the first favorable time period and the second. The GFS ensemble does not really favor that first time period and really unleashes it several more days into January. And listen, hear me out, I kind of favor more of the GFS ensemble with this. I just really think we're going to moderate that first period, but maybe not. I'm not here just to tell you what you want to hear. You guys should know that by now. But what you're looking at here is energy in the upper levels of the atmosphere. And this is that first storm system. Just think of these blobs of blue and green and yellow as energy in the upper levels of the atmosphere. This is the Euro ensemble. And that's going to dive down along with this dip in the jet. So you see this kind of bowl shape down here. This is energy diving down. This is going to favor more of a, I don't know if it's going to be a high impact storm system, but a more larger storm system for the middle portion of the country into maybe the Midwest and the Mid-Atlantic and the Northeast. And then there's going to be an opportunity as we're starting to get, and this is just the Euro ensemble, as we get a few more days into January for that jet to really dig a little bit deeper. So at this point, I'm going to get yellow right here. Let's choose pink. So at this point, storm track digging down here. We even have some southern stream energy that's trying to tap into right here. Plenty of energy around the jet and the northern stream. Okay. Are we going to have some sort of connection right into here to create a bigger storm? Maybe kind of right into here, with cold air coming down into this area. Big question. Okay. And then the energy just gets everywhere as we get pretty far out, which is pretty typical. So that's a pattern break now. Now let's section this off with temperatures and actually any kind of storm system that we are seeing. All right, these are temperatures, the Euro ensemble. Here it comes. There it is. Look, see, I think we'll get one first blast of cold air if the Euro ensemble is correct, in the Euro. And here it comes. It cools down the south and southeast. And sure enough, you get below average temperatures. Don't focus on how below average temperatures they are. Just know if you live in the blue, that's below average temperature. I mean, 5, maybe 10 degrees below average. And then, it could get as much as 5 to 15 degrees below average as we're getting a few days into January. Could there be a favorable winter storm pattern here? But as we progress forward, you start to see the central portion of the country get below average. Now, the Euro ensemble keeps you guys warm out here in the western U.S. But then you get just a widespread cold from Canada all the way through the entire central and just about all of the eastern U.S. except Maine. And then we keep this going, and it's just cold the rest of the run, and it brings even colder air at the end of the run. As we get about 6 to 7 days into January, it really wants to unleash cold air. But it still remains cold in the eastern U.S. It just looks like a reinforcing shot is dropping down. Now, the Euro ensemble, it's going to do something different, just purely based off the upper pattern. It's warm, it's warm, it's warm, and then we get into the new year, and then our pattern starts. Wants to dump a lot of cold air over the central portion of the country and the eastern Rockies, and it wants to keep the eastern U.S. warm for those first few days of January. Like I said, it just kind of whiffs on that first blast of cold air, really dumps into the central U.S., and it's not done running yet, unfortunately. So we don't know what happens at the end. We can go back and look at the OOZ, which is a lot colder with the first blast. But you can tell at the end of the run, it begins to try to get a lot of cold air into the entire lower 48. And, if we're looking at operational runs with this, I think it does better with showing that first blast of cold air. On the Euro, this is the operational run 10 days out, brings a lot of cold air into the southern tier of the country. And then the southeast, there it is, eastern U.S. And then here comes even bigger shot of cold air. This really gets very, very cold air into the eastern U.S. And then we get a moderation of temperatures kind of several days into January. And then we potentially get a colder air mass that begins to show up for the western U.S. and up here in Canada that could drop down. So what I'm seeing here is these cold blasts kind of sectioned out. I really think the one behind it is the colder one. Now the GFS, it's pretty warm. It's a pretty warm run. We get into the eastern U.S. and it's above average all the way through the first few days of January. And then here comes that first cold front, kind of moderates the temperatures a little bit, but doesn't cool it down that much in the southern tier of the country. The Great Lakes, the Northeast, continues to stay pretty warm compared to average. And it really just wants to dump all the cold air out west. And eventually at the end of the run, it begins to push this cold air across the middle of the country. So the GFS is just a flat out warmer run. Now, what about any kind of storm systems we're watching? This is the latest Euro, okay? For once, the Euro is favoring more of a wintry situation earlier on. And normally it's the other way around. All right. Normally Euro is a much more conservative model. But big system moves in a couple days before the new year into the Rockies. I really think that's going to happen. This dives down across the middle of the country, bringing snow the 30th into the 31st across Nebraska, the middle of the country. Now, this is going to change. So my friends in Nebraska don't look at that and say, hey, it's going to snow on the 30th. Mitch says it'll change. Has a pretty powerful low pressure, 994 moving across Kentucky. That would bring probably some severe weather across the southeast if that is what actually happens. Last afternoon of the year, this moves through. This is a very warm system, 989 millibar rain bomb. New Year's Day morning across the northeast. That's all rain. Cold air has not made it yet. And then the cold air begins to crash down. And this is just more of a widespread look on the Euro. And we start to get some moisture overrunning that cold air. And a lot of cold air sagged all the way down to the deep south, the eastern U.S. And then we get this storm system that begins to move in. And man, it is close to a winter storm for the southeast. In fact, it is snowing in Myrtle Beach on this run. Now, it's 318 hours out, but it is snowing along the Carolina coastline. Favorable track to low pressure. That is snow. And then we get a moderation of temperatures, just like what most guidance likes. And then we looks like we're about to drop down a lot of cold air. Remember, you got to go back and you got to think, what did the Climate Prediction Center say? It said between the 4th and the 17th. So honestly, if we get this cold air on the first day of that time period, you would consider that bonus. But I really think the Climate Prediction Center is really honking the horn at the fact that the coldest air is not going to come until we get a couple weeks into January. That's what I think. Now, I will take a look at my friends here in the Southeast because I know y'all want to see it. And I like looking at it too. And look at the snow breaking out over Wilmington, Myrtle Beach, Charleston, and it does show snow, and it's cool to look at. I enjoy looking at it too, guys. I'm not gonna be just one of them people that aren't gonna show this. I'll show it. I'm not gonna show it on like Twitter and stuff and Facebook because that stuff just goes completely viral. But it does show a few inches of snow for the coastal regions. Now, let me show you what the Euro yesterday showed. Even better, now not for those areas, but it showed the same time period, I might add, a big-time winter storm across the Carolinas, Virginia, even snow all the way down into the deep south. Snow for Charlotte, Raleigh, and then it turns into a blizzard for areas of the mid-Atlantic and the northeast, and it just does wild stuff. I'm not going to show you the map for that. No point in it because it's already changed. But I'm telling you, that time period is a period to watch, But, if we're looking at the GFS, it doesn't show much of any kind of winter weather. One thing it does show as we're getting into the January 1st, because it dumps all the cold air more out west, it wants to bring a major winter storm for the middle of the country. And there it is. And that's about the second or third run in a row that has done that. And then it just wraps up this 985 low as we're getting a few days into January. Doesn't ever really get the cold air into the eastern U.S. and just delivers another big cutter across the middle of the country. All right, and then I'll show you the Euro AI model. Euro AI model, here's that first storm system a couple days before New Year's. We get into New Year's Day. That moves across the northeast, and then it kind of follows somewhat of the route of the Euro, brings a storm system into not this weekend coming up, but next weekend. Not a lot of cold air, but it brings a storm system kind of like a week into January with cold air coming down. And, the Euro AI model wants to bring the cold air kind of in between those two periods that the other models are showing. So, one thing I'll show you is the Euro ensemble as far as snow, and we'll start this off the morning of the 30th. You notice not really any kind of signal for snow in the middle of the country besides the Rockies, which certainly could get a lot. And then watch how it sags south, fills in for everybody throughout the entirety of the run here. We even have a little bit of a signal down here in Texas, definitely in Arkansas, Oklahoma. You see how it all dropped south? And then we look at the eastern U.S. We'll back this up a little bit. And, through Christmas, through the New Year, not much besides what I'm about to talk about for the Northeast. And then as we start to get a few days into the new year, several days into the new year, there's where the signal begins to drop south, okay, for a little bit of snow. So We got to continue to watch out, for this. What we do know, and I'm going to show you this actually on the fly here, so bear with me. There it is. What we do know, guys, is the MJO is going to move into a favorable phase. I think we're going to have this working with us. I really do. And if we look at the Euro extended, I mean, it moves into phase 8. Phase 8, just after the turn of the new year. Okay, phase 8's right here. You see 8, 1, 2. Now you're thinking, I don't know what in the world that means. Well, if you want snow, if you like winter weather, widespread cold, but you need the cold for snow, then you certainly want to get into phase 8, 1, and even 2. Even 7 is favorable, which we're already starting to get close to phase 7 right now. So phase 8, phase 1 in January is going to do something for somebody. And we certainly get our way into this. Now, it does show it looping and back into phase 6 and stuff. And, I think that's just going to happen. But I do think we'll have a window for the first 2 weeks of January, at least. I really do. Now, we can hope that some of these kind of stall out in phase 1, phase 2, and 8. That would be nice. But anyways, just wanted to show you guys that. So moving past that, as far as what's happening weather-wise today, we got this waking up to some festive flakes flying around lower Michigan, areas of the UP, even areas of Wisconsin. A little bit of ice, too. A little bit of an ice freezing rain situation in certain areas. I don't think it's that huge of a deal. But southern Ontario, looks like we're still getting some ocean effect snow out on Cape Cod. In fact, I didn't even notice that. I'm going to look at my radar real quick and see. I love ocean effect snow. It's always cool. Yeah, I mean, look at that. You definitely got some ocean effect snow ongoing. So, man, just let me know if you live out on Cape Cod, how much snow you've picked up from this just ocean effect snow over the last, over 24 hours. But anyways, the southeast is quiet. We're going to watch that moisture is trying to bubble up, a little system off the southeast. It could bring a little bit of freezing rain to certain areas. But that's what's going on right now. Watch as warnings and advisories. We do have winter weather advisories across areas of D.C. I mean, we zoom in here, winter weather advisories for Frederick, Baltimore, D.C., up to Philadelphia. I mean, even northern sections like Middletown and Delaware, Bel Air. I mean, you guys have winter weather advisories up here for the interior New England, northeast areas, and including the downeast areas in Maine for what's going to happen really tonight to tomorrow. And then for what's going on right now, we have winter weather advisories across the Great Lakes region. If we zoom out, we've got winter storm warnings up for the Sierra Nevada, including some winter weather advisories also. Chance of thunderstorms for Dallas into Fort Smith, maybe all the way up to Fayetteville, Arkansas. And we do have a chance of thunderstorms for the Oregon and California coastline. Any shot of excessive rainfall really ain't going to be there today. But the southeast, it's a broad look at things. We got to watch this little low pressure that tries to develop off the coast of the Georgia and the Carolinas. It's going to bring a little bit of moisture overnight with enough cold air still hanging around. Some of this green you see could be falling in the form of a little bit of light freezing rain. Very possible. And then we get to tomorrow morning. I do think we'll have a little bit of freezing rain on the northern fringe of this precipitation that I just showed you here. And just get a little bit closer to it and look at the NAM. You see the splotches of pink here? That's freezing drizzle, light freezing rain. And I think, really, I would say anywhere from here to here, all the way into here, it could get some light freezing rain in this area late tonight into tomorrow morning. So don't be surprised. You wake up tomorrow morning or Christmas Eve morning to a little bit of a glaze. If we can't get a white Christmas, maybe we'll get an icy Christmas Eve morning. I know some people are like, dude, I don't want that, and I don't blame you. But this could hang around through tomorrow morning, and then eventually it warms up, and we don't have to worry about it anymore. But, the National Weather Service, they do discuss this in some of the National Weather Service offices here locally in the Carolinas, even here in Columbia. But it does pick up on a light glaze like in northeast North Carolina, southeast Virginia. And I do think we could have a light glaze even elsewhere, too. Unfortunately, National Weather Service out of Raleigh doesn't really have a great graphic up. The Northeast today, it's pretty quiet. We'll continue to deal with a little bit of ocean effect snow. But as we're getting into this afternoon, here comes our clipper. This is going to bring some moderate to even some bursts of heavy snow throughout the interior Northeast New England area. Look at this heavy snow falling this evening for southern Ontario, Toronto, Some snow will move into Buffalo this evening. Any last-second Christmas shopping is going to be quite snowy depending on where you live. I mean, from Northeast Ohio, Erie, Buffalo, Rochester, Syracuse, up into the Adirondacks, the Green and White Mountains. Just, you can't draw it up any better. This isn't going to be like a nor'easter or anything like that. But, you know, there's a lot of snow on the ground already in the Northeast. And this is going to be a white Christmas for a lot of people. It's going to be snow falling on Christmas Day? Probably not. But this is just going to put more snowpack on the ground, and here it comes into the overnight hours, midnight, 1 a.m. It's even snowing almost as far south as Pittsburgh, snowing still heavily overnight in Buffalo, some snow trying to move all the way down into Chicago, snowing for the entire state of Maine overnight, and I think almost the entire state of New York, even PA sees snow. And then we're going to get a little bit of a freezing rain event for a couple hours all the way down here in northern VA, Washington, D.C., a little bit of snow into West Virginia. And I think we could have a burst of really heavy snow tomorrow morning for New York City, all throughout New Jersey, Long Island, southern New England. The band could be a little bit more broad, so a little bit longer of a period of snow. And this snow eventually just clears everybody in the Northeast as we're getting into tomorrow. So you're going to wake up to what I think is going to be just flakes flying around for a couple hours in New York City. Could bring a dusting. Maybe somebody could get another inch of snow. So how much freezing rain and snow from this? Well, anywhere from basically, if you live in this yellow area, that's a chance for a few 1/100ths of an inch of ice. So when you squeeze in 1/10 of an inch of ice, talking about snow, I wouldn't expect much in this area. But moving over to West Virginia, maybe an inch or less of snow from Morgantown down to Elkins, the snowshoe. But I wouldn't expect a whole lot of, in the form of any snow from this. Ice, a little bit of ice is possible in eastern sections of West Virginia, certainly. And then we move into PA, Clarion, 1 to 2 inches of snow. Erie, I definitely think you can get more than an inch of snow. I think you'll get a couple inches of snow in Erie. Inch or less in Pittsburgh, State College, same thing. And just a dusting of snow is possible all the way, across eastern sections of PA. Scranton, maybe a couple inches of snow. Binghamton, 1 to 3. Warren, 1 to 2. And a little bit of ice is possible, too. We'll look at this. PA ice. Yeah, just if you live in the splotches of yellow, it's where you can get a couple 1/100ths of an inch of ice. Not a big deal. A little light glaze. But you combine maybe an inch or so of snow, a little bit of glaze of ice, and it could cause travel concerns. My friends here in New Jersey, eastern PA, inch or less of snow is possible. Philadelphia, maybe it'll be enough to coat everything on the Christmas lights and stuff like that. It'll be neat to see. And a little bit of ice is possible too. For Philadelphia to Wilmington, maybe even down to Dover. If you live in this yellow area, glaze of ice is possible. Go up to New York City area, going for about 3/10 of an inch of snow. Could be more, could be less. If you live up in the Middletown, maybe closer to an inch. Long Island, anybody could get a dusting of snow, I would say. Southern Connecticut, couple tenths of an inch of snow is possible. Just a little festive event as you wake up tomorrow morning. Mostly. And then up here in New York, anywhere from 1 to as much as 5 inches of snow, just depending on where you live. Buffalo going for around an inch, Syracuse 3, Rochester 2, Watertown 3. Just is going to put a nice coating of a couple inches of snow on everything. A lot of these areas already have snow on the ground. Burlington 3 inches, Newport 4, southern sections of Vermont maybe an inch or two of snow. Not a big event, but a nice festive event, I would say. Southern New England, Boston going for about a 1/2 inch. Not sure how much snow you guys still have on the ground, but listen, Southeast Mass continues to get the ocean effect snow. So it's going to be a white Christmas for a lot of you folks up here. Hartford, about 4/10 of an inch of snow. And Pittsfield, maybe an inch or two. So, and then we head on up here to New Hampshire and Maine. And this is where it could get heavier. Plymouth, go over 2 to 3. Concord, 1 to 2. Portsmouth, 1 to 2 inches of snow. Lebanon, 2 to 3. Littleton, 4 to 6. Colebrook, 4 to 6. Rangeley, 4 to 6. Augusta, 3 to 4. Auburn, 3 to 4 inches of snow. Jackman, 4 to 6. And the rest of Maine. Caribou, 1 to 2. Could get 6 to 8 inches of snow in Eastport. So definitely a white Christmas for just about all of Maine, if not all of Maine. So just widespread 1 to as much as 5-inch snowfall total. So enjoy it. Enjoy your nice white Christmas up here in the Northeast. You guys deserve it. The South Central U.S., some moisture will begin to bubble up. So I think by the time we get into late tonight, we'll start to get scattered rains across Oklahoma, Texarkana region. and Arkansas, southern Missouri, and I think we're just going to wake up to a really soggy start to your Christmas Eve morning across the Ozarks, eastern Oklahoma, all the way down to the border of Louisiana, Texas, Arkansas. And we could even get some thunderstorms from this. This will pretty much be a wet Christmas Eve as we're getting into Christmas Eve day across these areas too, unfortunately. So no white Christmas down here. But the north central U.S., the snow will really blossom over the next few hours and get quite heavy across lower Michigan. I think we could get a pretty heavy band of snow that develops in central Wisconsin today. It'll be interesting to see. I think this could be some really heavy wet snow. This will probably move across Lake Michigan. It'll continue to snow across lower Michigan. I think Detroit, you could mix this some snow at certain points today. We'll see what happens, but this will continue to move off. And, Oklahoma, I think, you're not going to get any snow in Indiana today, but if you live in Cleveland, maybe you switch to snow later this evening, but this looks like mainly rain and snowfall across lower Michigan. Green Bay, another 2 to 3 inches of snow. Appleton, 2 inches. Nothing from Milwaukee points south of Chicago. But, if you live in, northern sections and central sections of lower Michigan, especially northern, 6 to 8 inches of snow is possible from this. 5 to 8, Detroit, maybe close to an inch of snow. Grand Rapids, 4/10 of an inch. So, nice little event for you guys. Not expecting much, south of this. Western U.S., man, this video is long. We'll get a little energy surging across the Rockies, and then you will be greeted to a pretty wet late night for the Western U.S. Man, this is a pretty warm system, but you're going to get some heavy thunderstorms overnight across Northern California, Western Oregon, Washington State, and the snow levels could actually drop pretty decently across these areas. So if you're, live in the Cascades or these higher elevations, and even the Sierra Nevada, could have a very snowy start to your Christmas Eve, and Christmas Eve could be snowy across the Sierra Nevada. So temperatures still locked in well below freezing across the Northeast. Man, well below freezing. So anything that's falling out there in Cape Cod, it's definitely sticking like crazy. Warm day in south in Florida. If you're one of those people that, for whatever reason, likes to be in a warm climate around Christmas time, well, it's nice in South Florida. Southeast, a cool day, moderating a little bit across the Mississippi Valley, and then the Western U.S., this is what it looks like. Well, that video went way too long. God bless all y'all. Have a wonderful day, and I'll talk to you again soon.